Welcome to the Writer's Journey podcast. I'm Michael Laran, a science fiction and fantasy author on a journey to go from nobody to bestseller, and I'm documenting every step of the way. Tune in every week as I pull back the curtain on my writing life and how I'm building a writing career while working a full-time job, raising a family, and attending law school classes in the evenings. You can find show notes for this week's episode, a free starter library of my fiction, and much more at michaellaran.com.
That I just want to get on some sort of medium just in case I'm historically correct on it, because I think something's coming, or I predict something could be coming that's going to make all of our lives a little bit more difficult. And in some respect, it's already here today. All right. So just real quick, announcements. February Writing Power Hour is going to be Saturday, February 6th at 10 a.m. Central Standard Time. Just want to make sure that everybody knows that. Depending on when you're listening to this, you may want to click the link in the show notes and join us as we write toward our next book. Now, wins for the week. I got my new novel off to my editor. So fact checkers got everything back to me, which was great. And new novel is off to the editor, and she should have it back to me probably by Valentine's Day. Then it goes off to my final editor, and I'm off to the races. So that means it's time to start writing book 2. That's usually when I start writing book 2, is when the first book goes off to the editor. So I haven't done it yet, but hopefully by the next episode I'll have some updates on how that's going. Now, lesson learned this week. This is a kind of a weird week because I'm starting law school classes again. It's my final semester of law school, and I'm taking 2 classes, but they are back-to-back. So it's 2 classes in one semester, and they're 6 weeks long, which I can actually deal with that. I have no problem with that. In fact, this first class is the professor assigned a textbook that was 1,000 pages long, and I'm thinking to myself, oh, crap. Please don't make me read these 1,000 pages in 6 weeks. And actually, I only have to read like 300, which is not that bad. I can knock out. And it's actually fairly easy reading. Like, it's not dry like a lot of law school stuff. So I have been trying to weave in, how do I study for classes versus get my content in versus all the other obligations and things that are kind of pulling me away. And so what I'm going to be doing, at least for the next 6 weeks, is I'm going to be repurposing my early morning writing time into studying time. So 5:30 in the morning, it may not be 5:30, it might be like 6:30. I might sleep in a little bit. I don't want to wake up that early to study boring stuff. So I might get up at 6:30. And I'm just going to study. And I'm going to read as much as I can, figure out what my baseline is, figure out how many pages I can get done in that morning session, multiply that out by however long it takes to finish the book, and then add an additional 10 to 20% each day so I can start getting ahead. And I can start doing the work ahead of time. And the first probably half of the class, which is 3 weeks, is probably going to be a little rough. So I can't guarantee what's going to happen there. But the good thing is that I have all the episodes of Writing Tip of the Day pre-scheduled all the way up until the middle of April. So I don't have to worry about that, at least for the first 6 weeks. Author Level Up, not quite there yet, but should be there soon. So I don't have to worry about that. That means the only thing I have to worry about is my daily blog and Writer's Journey, which is far more manageable. So, it's a delicate balance. Life changes every few months, and so you got to figure out a new way to weave things in, and I'll be sure to share how that goes. Now, idea of the week, this is a repeat idea. This is a greatest hits idea because I thought that this would be apropos to the episode. And this was, I don't remember when I did this, sometime last year, but it was a recommendation and a call for someone who is a book cover designer and a good, competent book cover designer to start creating content for folks in the writing community. I think that writers need to start thinking about how to do their own covers. And I also think that they just need the right instruction. Like, that's the thing. Like, how do you do it? Like, there's so many different steps. Like, what software do you need? Well, obviously you need Photoshop or Illustrator. How do you use Photoshop and Illustrator? That's the problem. Everybody knows that's what you use to do a cover, but how do you, what is the logistics from A to Z of how to use it? How do I know when to use what font when? How do I know what effects to use? How do I do those effects? These are all things that I think that somebody who has a YouTube skill, has the cover design skills, I think somebody could do very well for themselves by having a channel that does nothing but cover design tips aimed at helping you do your own covers and do them right. I think there's a world of opportunity available for that person, whoever that is, who wants to try to tackle it. All right, that's just my idea for the week. Take it, spread it. Maybe somebody will do it, because this is what we're going to need based on what I'm going to talk about next, which is the topic of the week. So what I'm going to talk about is how I recently needed to find a cover designer and had a difficult time. And I'm going to talk about my thoughts on some alarming trends that I'm seeing among cover designers. Certainly nothing wrong that they're doing, but just some alarming things I'm seeing. And how I think we may be on the verge of a cover designer shortage crisis and what you can do about it. All right, so let's start from the beginning. You all know that I've been writing a novel, and this novel is a new urban fantasy series. And it just turns out that I happen to be, just because of some circumstances, in the need for a new cover designer. And I kind of looked at my old cover designers, because I like to work with somebody I've worked with before. And so I went to look at my old cover designers, and bless their hearts, there's either one or two things. Either they weren't taking commissions anymore because they were so busy with work that, they wouldn't be able to return my emails even if I wanted them to. Or they had waiting periods of 6 months or more. And for someone like me, I like to try to publish my stuff as soon as possible. I can kind of put up with a 2 or 3 month waiting period. I can't put up with 6, All of them had raised their prices since the last time that I had ordered a fiction book cover, which was in 2018. They raised their prices by, I didn't do the math 100%, but it was probably around 15 to 20%. All right, so there's that. And then, so I'm thinking to myself, I can't use any of my prior designers because they either are not taking work, they're charging more money probably than what I want to pay, and or it's going to take them a long time to even get to this book. Not to mention, that's just one book. I'm going to probably have at least 3 to 5 books in this series. So I found myself kind of at a crossroads where it's like, I'll just find somebody else, right? Not a big deal. So I started looking around in the genre that I write in, which is urban fantasy, and kind of looking at all the different cover designers. Some were good, some were just not to my taste, like just from a personal aesthetic standpoint. And I started doing Google searches, and I found some pretty decent urban fantasy cover designers. Like, I asked around, and I found some folks that were fantastic, had no issues at all. But I found I kept running into the same problem, which is the waiting period and or that they weren't taking commissions. And there was another problem I'm going to talk about in a minute. All right, so eventually I found somebody, and I was able to make it work. Here is the issue with this. In 2018, the cost of cover design among all the people that I was familiar with was X price. It is now Y price. So, like, for example, pre-made covers, the cost of those has always varied kind of wildly. But generally speaking, before 2018, you could probably get a pre-made design for 30 to maybe $75. Again, there were some that were a little bit higher, some were a little bit lower, but that's generally what you got. Now, you would be lucky to get a good pre-made cover for under like $150. Like the prices have ramped up significantly. And I've also noticed that there's different tiers with pre-made covers now as well, whereas that didn't used to be the case. So the cost of pre-made covers has gone way up. The cost of your average cover, again, this is my own eyeball estimates, but from what I was used to paying, it before 2018 was anywhere between $200 and probably $400 for a cover. Any more than that, you kind of balk, kind of bat, it's maybe a bit much. The really, really good designers or the ones that have a very high-end product tended to charge more than that. All right. But for the most part, you could get a cover between $200 and $400 and maybe $450. Now, you'd be lucky to be able to find a cover for less than $200. For the most part, you're going to pay $300 to $600, maybe $700. And then the high-end designers are going to charge more, right? So, again, those are just my eyeball estimates, but I kind of kept seeing the same thing over and over again, which is that the costs were going up, the waiting periods were also going up, and I probably emailed 4 or 5 designers that I liked to try to get on the calendar, and they sent me their prices, which I would, whatever. I'm not really happy about the increase, but I'll pay it. And then they were like, oh, well, our waiting period is like, the soonest any of them could get me in was like May, and then there was one that worked. But I was just like, wow, I got to wait till May to get the cover for book 1. I mean, it's December. That's a long time. It really is a long time for someone like me. And so I kept thinking to myself, the cost is going up, but I'm not getting anything more for my money. Like if like just for sake of argument, if I would have paid a designer $200 in 2018 and now I pay them $400 in 2021, I'm not getting any more for my money than what I paid 3 years ago. I'm getting the exact same product. I'm paying a designer to do exactly the same thing for exactly the same cost, and I'm not getting anything extra for my money. I don't know about you, but that's a bit problematic, right? And then you add on the waiting period, all right? So what I think is coming, like I said, the cost of cover design has always been trending upward. Like, that's not a surprise. Like, that shouldn't be a surprise to anybody, especially if you've been around as long as me. Used to be able to pay dirt cheap for cover designers, and now the price is understandably going up. But some of the reasons I think they're going up, though, is what's problematic, and it's mainly because cover designers are solo operations. Like, I would love to be able to talk to a cover designer about this and get their perspective on it. But this is what I think, is that many of them are solo operations, and because they do good work, the good ones, they start to get so many people knocking on their door that they can't possibly do all of these people's covers. And if they do, their waiting period just lengthens. And so they've got to pay their bills. Many of them are starting to hire assistants now to help them. And so the rates go up. And the rates go up for reasons that they need to cover their costs, not anything for you. So those costs get passed on to you. Yeah, that's a little scary, because here's the thing. There are a lot of cover designers out there, but not all of those cover designers are good cover designers. Like, some of them are still learning, and some of them just are god awful. And so what happens is the people that start off charge less, and then they ramp up their prices over time, and then all of a sudden they have so much work that they cut off commissions. And I feel like that's the life cycle of a lot of designers. And that puts people like you and me in a difficult situation, because we're writing books constantly, and we don't have a consistent cover design experience every single time, which is a problem, because if you don't have a brand or a strong branding template on your cover, all your covers are going to look different. And that's another problem for readers, because readers aren't going to be able to... There's something to be said, like Stephen King and John Grisham and Nora Roberts, there's a reason why all their book covers look the same. is because when people are browsing, they see that giant author name and they're like, oh my gosh, I know that, right? That's kind of what we should be doing too, right? So I think that there's a pending cover designer shortage coming. I just don't see enough. I don't see enough good cover designers coming into the market that are going to offset the number of good cover designers who are getting snatched up, and who have long waiting periods and are not available. Again, maybe I'm wrong on this. I hope I'm wrong on it. But, if I'm paying 20% more now than what I paid 3 years ago, how much am I going to be paying 3 years from now? You got to think about these sort of things. And you get to a point where, you start projecting this, and you get to a point where it's going to cost you $700-800 for a cover design, which is just, it's crazy, So what can we do about this? Because I don't want to be negative. Like, I don't blame cover designers for doing what they're doing. I think if it were me, I'd probably do the same thing. I would raise my prices, because you take on fewer clients, raise your prices, you can still make a good living. But what do we do about it? Well, that goes back to my idea of the week. Somebody help us design our own covers. I used to be firmly in the camp that I'm never going to design my own covers. And the more I start running into stuff like this, the more I realize, maybe that's not the right camp to be in. I just don't know how to get out of that camp, because design is a specific skill, and you really have to know what you're doing, and you have to be able to execute in order to be able to do it yourself. You can't just slap together horrible covers. I think we can all agree that we don't want to do that. So is there someone who can teach us how to create good covers? It may not be as good as what a professional can do, but a cover that's good enough. Then there have been some in the community that have created some content toward this, but people need nitty gritty. Like, they need their hands held and walked through Photoshop specifically for book cover design. And I just don't see that today. That's the first way I think that we can shepherd our way out of this is, it's going to be a have and have not situation. You're going to have authors who either have the money to pay to skip line, or authors who are willing to wait for a very long time. And then you're going to have people who are like me who need something quickly. And so people like me are probably going to have to resort to doing our own covers at some point. All right. Maybe not all of our covers, but some of those covers. So to me, that's the best way to shepherd us out of this problem. All right. The second way to shepherd yourself out of this problem is to create a strong branding template. If you have not done that, I don't think it's too late to do. It's never too late to do that. Hire a designer, have them create a cover template that makes your name prominent on the cover somehow. And then every designer that you use moving forward needs to adhere to that template. It can be a little bit different. It's kind of like magazine covers. Magazine covers are a little bit different, but it's always the same. The essence is always the same, right? So that way, if you do need to change cover designers, you are at least maintaining your brand. All right. To me, that is the most important thing you can do. That's worth paying the cost of a cover to have someone do that for you, just so you can look down the road and start to avoid this problem. And then another thing I think that we can do is just to continue to talk about it. Cover design, the costs are going up, and so how do we handle that? Is there some sort of artificial intelligence solution that can help us in this regard? I don't know the answer to that. I would think that there's something out there maybe that could help. Is there, where are places where we can get better stock footage, particularly people who write books with people of color on them? That is a constant problem that I have. The only way around the problem I found in designing a cover with a person of color on it, I've tried to use stock photos and I had some success, but I usually find that I can't find a model that has enough good poses to use for a long series. The only way around that I've discovered is illustrating your cover. It's the only way. It's the only way to solve the problem, right? So anyway, I'm digressing a little bit there. But again, I hate to be overly negative. I try to end these episodes on a positive note. Now, to contrast this is not a problem in the editing world. All right, this is uniquely a problem to cover design. Editors, you can find an editor tomorrow. If you could find an editor that'd be willing to work tomorrow if you wanted to. The cost of editing has gone up a little bit over time that I've noticed. It's been a lot more stable though, and editors are more price sensitive, I would say, in that you can always find an editor that's willing to do a job at your budget. Just because your editor raises their rates, that doesn't mean you're stuck with that person. You can always find someone who can work within your budget. Whereas with cover design, you cannot do that. So, just something to think about. When you're getting your cover design, maybe in the back of your head, hey, Michael said that thing about branding once. Maybe I can pay or have this designer do something for me and do this. And just make sure that they give you the source file. Because if they give you the source file, you can just give that to the next person. It's absolutely worth paying for your source files at this point, because you never know what can happen to your designer. I mean, I talk a lot in my book, 150 Self-Publishing Questions. What happens if your designer gets hit by a bus tomorrow? What are you going to do? How are you going to make sure that the consistency of your content is there, right? What are you going to do if your designer stops taking clients? What are you going to do if the designer raises your rates to the point where you can't afford them anymore? What are you going to do if your designer's not available for 2 years? So getting your source file, I think, is important so that you can minimize some of those issues. So now I do want to clarify, because I don't want people to misunderstand me. I don't want people to think, oh, I've just discovered that this is an issue. It's always been an issue in some regard. Especially waiting periods, right? It's not anything new that you have to wait a while for your cover designer. Like when I wrote my space opera series, I had to get on her calendar probably 6 months in advance, and I basically had to decide at that point I was going to write 9 books, and she was the one I wanted to do it. So I had to kind of make that sacrifice, and I had to wait like 9 months to get all of those covers done. And that was in 2016. So, it's a constant perennial problem. The thing I just want people to, I just want to call to people's attention is that it's continuing, and that you're gonna continue to wait and pay more for it, right? So something's got to give at some point. And, at some point, maybe this will become such a problem for other people in other genres. Because like I said, it's just one guy in one genre looking at a problem. Maybe, like I said, it won't be a problem. Maybe it will become a problem, and it'll become such a pain point that we'll kind of come together as a community to figure out how to solve it. I do think that there could be an alternative business model that could work, meaning that a designer could, if they wanted to, take on a team of designers that can design a cover for you. So they can kind of share their costs that way. I know of a couple of different firms that are doing that, and they seem to be doing it at a pretty good rate. But again, those places are outside of the United States and United Kingdom. So I don't know what the answer is. I just don't know what the answer is. I just raised the question. Again, it's a thought that I had on my mind. It was something that was really bothering me over the last couple weeks, and I just wanted to share it, to socialize it. I very well could be wrong, and the future could tell me to go pound sand, Michael Laron. But from where I'm sitting, I've been doing this for 8 years, guys, and I have not seen prices spike like they have over the last 3 years. I blame it on the pandemic. I blame it on the fact that more and more authors are getting savvier about cover design. And so it's an issue that we got to deal with. So how do we deal with it as a community? All right. So thank you so much for listening. Hope you enjoyed this show, and I'll plan on talking to you next week. Have a great day.
my favorite novels, join my fan club by visiting michaellaron.com/fanclub. If you're a writer and want to connect with me further, check out my YouTube channel, Author Level Up, for helpful writing advice at authorlevelup.com. Thanks for listening, and I'll be back next week.